Divas, welcome back to this week's Reporter Roundtable with my two guys, my boys, Scripps Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders and Spectrum News Capitol reporter Jason Delgado. We talk about the controversy over UF's new president that is not. We talk about the budget. We give you some highlight. They gave you some good highlights about that. We also talk about a new candidate for governor, David Jolly, and much, much more. Plus, stick around to the end. We let you in on some of the best snack secrets in the Capitol.
It has to do with butter? Yeah, butter.
You can thank me later.
Join us for this week's Deeper Dive Reporter Roundtable. You won't want to miss it.
What they're saying now, they're saying, we've been here for 36 hours. We're feeling good. We're feeling like we've got this. And I think the big question mark for Floridians is, where are they going to save? How much money is going back into their pockets?
You're listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida. Let's dive in.
We're having a reporter roundtable here in the Speakeasy with Scripps Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders. Welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me.
And his sidekick, that would be Jason Delgado, Spectrum News Capitol reporter. Reporter roundtable in the Speakeasy. A lot of news going on. The thing that I've been really focused on today and Wednesday, and we're doing this on Thursday. We always have to give a caveat nowadays because stuff changes so yes. rapidly. Right now, it looks like there's an agreement with the legislature on a budget, and that may or may not hold. Right? So we'll see what happens with that. I started off the week with Tuesday's Board of Governors meeting, where the unanimously selected candidate for the University of Florida presidency, the state's flagship university, Santa Ono, was rebuked, and in a 10-6 vote, they rejected the hiring of him as president. It has made national news in higher education. I think the New York Times did a story about it. Have you guys been following that at all?
I haven't followed it terribly because I was busy talking to David Jolly that day. But
we will get to David
I'm
Jolly.
Sure we will.
We will get to David Jolly. I promise.
All of these Jolly names: Santa Ono, David Jolly.
Oh, right.
Just a wonderful time in Florida politics. No, I wasn't following it terribly close, but thank you.
Wasn't loud enough.
Even better. But I knew that it was stunning. It was a historic first, right? The BOG.
Never before, is what I understand.
First time ever rejected a candidate. And it's interesting because I think really what the reason for it being so high profile is because it suggests to a lot of people that this is the result of politics being so deeply embedded in the selection process of universities and their leadership.
Yeah.
And my, how much times have changed, because this wasn't something that was, I mean, if a bunch of trustees said, we want this guy, the BOG would seriously consider it and probably advance the candidate. At least it has historically here in the state of Florida.
Right. Well, I actually spoke with a national education leader, a woman who's the head of the American Association. I always get this mixed up. It's either the Association of American Colleges and Universities or the American Association of Colleges and Universities, but it's AAC&U. I spoke with her. She's the president of that, Lynn Pasquarella, for a story that came out today. She indicated that this was political patronage and that it has a chilling effect on academic independence. And, we're seeing this nationally. She actually is not one of the experts who use the patronage word, but I think they would all agree that that's what we're seeing developing in Florida. And I think what also was stunning about it is that he stepped down as the president of the University of Michigan, which is no slouch.
That's gotta stink.
Yeah. So he's now out of a job. But the dragging of this guy on social media And it was weird because in some ways people were interpreting this as a loss for Governor DeSantis, but I didn't really see it that way because
he stepped away.
He didn't really come out. He didn't rally for this guy. He didn't publicly advocate. He gave a very tepid comment about him at the beginning.
Which is notable given the governor's involvement in higher ed
that's right.
thus far.
That's right.
I will say this was one of those like rare moments where, I mean, us, probably neck deep in the budget, but my eyes were totally fixed on the Florida channel, kind of on this.
Well, I was
meeting.
home. I was home watching. This is funny. People like to know, set the scene, what we do, right? I was home working from home because I knew I was going to be covering this. So I was IMing with Jim Saunders, who was in the press gallery, and I was telling him what was going on. I was like, oh my God, and he said, yeah, it's on here in the press gallery. And so I know that you guys,
That's
don't
where
work
I
out of
was.
the, you don't.
I made my way upstairs.
Oh, you wanted to be around the real journalists.
See, for those of you not in the Capitol, the few listeners who are not in the Capitol when the legislature's in session, we have a lot who aren't. But for those of you who aren't, the broadcast journalists generally hang out on the fourth floor. And the rest of us peons are up in the Senate or House press galleries.
The brain trust. They all exist up there, and they're
the handsome people are downstairs.
Oh, I don't know about that. But you guys are all hammering away on your keyboards and getting into the minutia of every story. Meanwhile, we're like, hey, do you have a clever pun I can use for Santa Ono? Should I say, oh no? You know what I mean? Like,
oh no.
Exactly.
Oh no's a no-go.
Exactly. That's exactly what we're doing.
I spent the second half of that day as if I was some grizzly New York Post reporter in a smoke-filled room.
Okay, well, before we leave, one of you is giving me a haiku, so don't.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Well, let me ask you this.
Yes.
Because I admittedly tuned in at the second half of that meeting. What I noticed, I felt like there wasn't, from what I watched, a lot of academic questions.
No, that was noticeable. They spent about an hour. So they were scheduled for 2 hours and they went 4 hours. And about 3.5 of those hours were focused on attacking his previous position on diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI, systemic racism, which he was very, opposed to.
Not only that, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
We're years removed, COVID. They spent a considerable amount of time talking about COVID policies at the University of Michigan. And I'm like, well.
Yeah. And also because he's an immunologist. So they were trying to shred him, saying you're an immunologist. What do you think now about closing down campus? And he's like, and I will say he did not do a great job of defending himself. I mean, maybe he was tired. Maybe he didn't get good prepping, but he's like, well, I'm a research scientist. I'm not a doctor. And they're like, well, you're an immunologist. And he said, I'm not a doctor. So, we followed, like everyone, we followed the best advice at the time. They beat him up over, they had an encampment on campus after the October 7th attack by Hamas, and Jewish students were, not comfortable on campus. Now, since then, the Hillel, which is the student Jewish union, essentially, at UM and UF, both came out and endorsed him. The head of the Anti-Defamation League embraced him. Paul Renner, former House Speaker Paul Renner, released this document on Twitter during the meeting that was Oppo research, 22-page Oppo research on Santa Ono, and grilled him. I mean, it was, and to the point where one of the other trustees said, this is not a court of law. We're supposed to do a yay or a nay here. We're not interrogating him.
And wasn't there some question of whether or not Renner wanted the job himself?
He fell under the spotlight too.
Yeah.
Yes. I included that in my story.
I've spent, as you'll have, considerable amount of time interviewing or speaking with Mr. Renner.
Yes.
I've never seen him be so assertive as he was in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in his defense.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like he clearly made it clear. He's like, I want to speak on the record about this.
So he was asked. So Eric Szilagyi, who is a governor, he asked Maury Husseini, who's the chair of the University of Florida Board of Trustees, very long time, prominent Republican donor, been involved in the state university system for many, many years under a variety of different governors. And he was all in on Ono. And now I'm thinking, oh no. And
You're welcome.
So Eric Szilagyi asked Maury, well, is there anyone on the board who is going to vote on this selection, who's asking all these questions, who may have expressed an interest in the presidency position? And Husseini said, yes. And Szilagyi said, who? And immediately Maury said Paul Renner. And then Paul Renner immediately jumped in and said, I did not seek that out. But what was even more interesting is I was asked by the governor's office to express my interest. And I called Maury, and Maury said, thanks, we're not interested.
Oh.
And yeah. So it was like a back channel talk. And then he said, I would, he basically was like, I resemble that remark, that kind of a thing. And
he also made clear to Mr. Renner that I don't want it. If you offer it to me, I won't take it.
Yeah.
So, you can check Paul Renner off the U of President's list. Maybe.
Can you?
Hey,
maybe.
I don't know, buddy. Yeah, we got a whole nother round we got to go through.
I threw in a pretty strong maybe there.
Well, I mean,
just taking the man at his word.
He did say very vehemently, I will not take it at this, at this juncture. I wouldn't take it. But, we do have another round. And, but it does call into question who would want to apply. I mean, House Speaker Danny Perez said today, who's going to want to apply for this job now?
Yeah.
Not me.
And he called it
not me.
Yeah, I mean, he called it a shame, and obviously the House was working for a transparency bill that would provide more light on this whole process and the candidates that were, potentially. Here's what I thought was so interesting about today, because you had the not just the dueling comments about the budget, but also this bill became front and center because this was such a big topic, and so you've got Danny saying we need more transparency. That's why this process blew up like it did.
A couple of years ago, they shielded presidential searches from the state's public record and open meetings laws. And now only the finalists, until the finalists are announced. And so what the speaker was saying is, if we had known this earlier, all the questions about this guy would have bubbled up to the surface before now. But it was striking, to your point, Jason, the amount of time they spent just really attacking the DEI and the anti-racism. I found that somewhat shocking. I hate to say shocking, but it was surprising to me that this is the state's flagship university. There were no questions about what are you going to do to bring. Maybe they already knew that had done, somebody had whipped the votes, so there was no point in asking how you were going to advance the fundraising or the large health care system and all of that. But the focus was on him being like a recent convert to the anti-woke philosophy. And, fair enough. The guy was all in on DEI and systemic race and, opposition to systemic racism until he wasn't this year.
Right. But, in all fairness, and I think everyone can acknowledge, there's certainly more to a university president and what they bring to the table than their political or philosophical beliefs.
We went through something like this back when I was working in Iowa. We had a university president change up. Sally Mason resigned, and they were looking at a bunch of different candidates to bring in. And they landed on a guy who used to head Pillsbury, like the company that makes the biscuits. And it's got the Doughboy. My current physique.
Oh, stop. My gosh. The guy's anorexic.
body dysmorphia is what I like to call it.
Yes.
I covered the situation because it was very controversial. The university they were so mad. The faculty was, at least, and some of the student body as well, because they thought that this was a businessman. They were bringing in a businessman to lead this great research university. I had an opportunity to sit down and talk to this candidate. And what he basically told me was, hey, listen, my job is to basically run this place like a business. I have to fundraise. That's one of the biggest jobs for any university president.
Right.
I'm not getting into the weeds about, faculty and, political division or any of that stuff or what the students are learning. I'm just trying to make this the best university possible by bringing in as much money as possible. Right. Most of my job is sort of the business side and the cash flow. So that, I think, to me, always added such an interesting perspective of what a university president actually does. And it was interesting to see that juxtaposition play out here with Ono, because it was so political. That was all they asked about, was just, where do you sit with DEI? And I get the Republican side of this, which is they say for years,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Fair enough, right?
We have had this liberal slant to our universities, and we need to pull it out. But it was unlike anything I'd seen.
Me too. Not just, we need to replace this liberal, ivory tower, lefty liberal activism in higher education with merit-based academic excellence. We see the Hamilton Center. We see a more traditional return to the classics. And some of the speakers that they're, but I think it was this person. They personally went after him, and he was, until very recently, adhering to some of these policies where they're welcoming inclusion and diversity. I mean, and on the face of it, those don't seem like such really dangerous or horrible things. You know what I mean?
Well, maybe I'm off base here, but there's a trend. When you look at the recent university appointments or new presidents, they're not necessarily academics. And I'm not saying it as an insult. I say their backgrounds
look at Marva Johnson at FAMU.
They come with political backgrounds. FIU acknowledged as much with Jeanette Nunez,
right?
Where they openly said at the board meetings that, hey, this is a very rare opportunity for us to have someone of such a high caliber with so many connections who can kind of open the floodgates of funding.
Right.
So when I think of Mr. Ono, I don't see a politician, regardless of however much they made of his political policies.
Right.
I mean, the guy's a scientist, and he told us a million times that day, like, I'm a scientist.
Sure. And
I thought one of the things that really also struck me, guys, was that on social media, and it wasn't during this meeting, but they went after him or questioned his fitness because he had attempted to commit suicide or take his own life. I think that's the words that we use. He had attempted to take his life when he was younger. And when he was the president of the University of Cincinnati, he came out and spoke publicly about this because one of the students did take their own life. And he wanted to try to, offer support. And like people online his critics were attacking, were using that as an illustration of that he wasn't mentally fit to be president, which I thought was really like, why go there?
It's vicious.
Yeah.
It's vicious out there.
Yeah. All right. Well, what did we say? Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no's a no. Oh, no's a no-go.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll be right back with Forrest Saunders and Jason Delgado.
Forrest, last time you and I held hands as you read.
It was a tough haiku.
Would you like me to?
Hang on.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay, divas. You know what time it is. It's that time. The news in haikus brought to you this week by Forrest Saunders.
I was actually told that this week I cannot refer to my dog's defecation. That was a listener of yours who said that I should not do that. So I'm going to be topical this week. We're going to be topical.
All right, here we go.
Bog has made its choice. No Michigan president. So, oh no.
And there you have it. The news in haikus. don't forget, we'd love to hear your haiku. You can slide them into my DMs, or you can send them to podcasts. That's podcasts with an S at e.newsserviceflorida.com. Wherever you're listening, please don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating if you like what we're doing. And we're back with Jason Delgado and Forrest Saunders. Mixed it up a little bit for you there.
Thank you. That was fresh.
Tell me about the budget. Now I can be quiet. I'll be quiet because I have not been in the Capitol all week and I know nothing. What's going on?
Progress.
Yes.
Dare I say it? Progress.
I think that the control tower has called the plane and has said you are clear.
Drink.
You are clear to land. But I don't know that they have gotten close to touchdown just yet. I think somebody asked President Albritton earlier today where he thought we were on a departure, vote on June 16th, which I think is the tentative date, and he gave a 90%. He's pretty sure that they were going to have a vote on the 16th. 90% sure that they were going to have a vote. Now, they gave themselves 2 days of leeway, so they extended session officially until the 18th of June.
Oh, did they?
Yes.
I didn't even know that.
So both chambers have agreed to that, and that means that, they've got a little bit of wiggle room there with that 72-hour cool-off period.
Did I say I would be quiet? Because I'm not. Because to me, the longer they have, the more opportunity for chicanery there is.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
I just think no.
Yeah.
But
it was
you're
supposed
in the
to be
Capitol.
done.
What's the aura? How does it feel? Does it feel?
The vibe feels like they're getting there.
I certainly think everyone's far more optimistic today than they were, say, a week or two ago.
Okay.
There are plenty of things left to be ironed out, but the big top lines seem like they're set.
And if you look at the quotes from 2 weeks ago, things weren't looking too
You're
sunny
a
in the
liar.
Florida Capitol.
You're a liar, Senator Albritton.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly. Our word is our bond. That was the House Speaker. And you look at what they're saying now. They're saying, we've been here for 36 hours. We're feeling good. We're feeling like we've got this. And I think the big question mark for Floridians is, where are they going to save? How much money is going back into their pockets? Because we were promised originally, remember, a $5 billion sales tax cut or a rebate for homesteaders from Governor DeSantis. We're not going to get either of those.
I don't think the House or Senate ever said we're going to do that, though.
Well, the House wanted to do the sales tax plan, right?
No, they never said they were going to do the $1,000 rebate.
Oh, no. Perez said that was a no-go for him because it was new spending. And his whole goal was to reduce it.
So do we know what the tax deal is?
Yes. So I think the big question, and I think there's still a question mark on it.
Yes,
is how are they going to? They've committed to this $350 million.
Yeah, so they got a new framework, $2.25 billion they're going to cut from reoccurring revenue. Right, so they're knocking that out.
They're cutting spending. That's been the Speaker's big mantra. Yeah. We're cutting spending. You keep spending more every year, and you don't need to do
which they've committed themselves to doing.
Yes, $900 million going to get eliminated through the business rent tax. They're going to kill that. Done. Gone.
Same page there, House and Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the Florida families.
Yes.
Where
$350 million.
And that helps me how?
Well, good question.
I'm glad you asked.
Because you know what?
Because
it's all
we asked the exact same questions today.
Okay.
Yeah, no, but you should, right? It's your taxpayer dollars. Right. And that was the big selling point, I think, for these chambers was we're going to tackle affordability. We're going to bring down spending. We're going to save you some money. And there were all these promises made. Remember, Albritton had an idea that he was going to eliminate sales tax on anything that was $75 or less for clothing, right? Shoes, shirts, all that stuff. That's not going to happen. So instead, what we're left with, it sounds like in this new deal, is $350 million in reoccurring sales tax holidays. So $350 million down from $500 billion or $5 billion. Excuse me.
I mean, we've had them for like hurricane supplies, outdoor supplies, clothing, back to school supplies,
Freedom Summer.
Well, there was the Second Amendment.
Do you run out and buy stuff? Do you run out and buy stuff when those sales tax holidays take place? Because I'll just confess, I never do.
As a single dude with no kids, I don't. But I mean, the way President Albritton put it was that, you look at the back to school thing, maybe churn it from 2 weeks into a month long, or maybe even perhaps open up new holidays, such as that Second Amendment summer thingy.
Second Amendment.
Yeah, DeSantis proposed that, and he's kind of gotten grumpy that lawmakers didn't take it up. I mean, and we also don't have the big hurricane sales tax holiday like we usually do, because that would start on Memorial Day weekend and then end on Labor Day weekend. But we haven't had that this year because we haven't passed a budget. And, you know, like I thought about getting like a generator.
Yeah, I have too.
Because like, oh, hey, no sales tax. That sounds like a good deal.
Right.
But I just never got around to it because we live in Tallahassee and now, and I'll say this. I know. Gary Fineout would jump on me if I said that.
I had a tree come through my roof. I had to move into a different neighborhood.
No. I hear you.
My power used to go off when it rained hard in Tallahassee.
I have had nothing but great experiences with Tallahassee Utilities.
Okay, well, you don't live in Lafayette Park or Indian Head Acres.
I live in Southwood.
3 weeks.
Okay.
After the tornadoes.
You're underground.
Yep, that's exactly it.
After those tornadoes.
You can F off right into the
There we go.
There it is.
We got it.
And you deserve that
another one. No,
you absolutely deserve that one.
I said what I said.
I spent 3 weeks, and people fared worse. I spent 3 weeks without power.
Yes.
And still going to work.
Yes.
I'm not saying
I don't want to relive that again.
I'm not saying that's good, but would you get a generator? Would you use that sales tax holiday?
Assuming I was in a position to purchase a home in this market.
Well, and the other thing is like, yeah, exactly. But you're an apartment dweller, are you
and then
not?
had the liquidity to buy a generator. Okay. Yes, that would be a logical choice.
Well,
yes.
I own a home, and I have thought about buying a generator. It's a big. You're forking out, about $1,000 at least, and then I'm like, I don't know if I would even know how to use it. So I've heard of people going in with neighbors, and then you can share the power or whatever.
There's certainly a lot of upkeep and routine maintenance.
Yeah.
That's not something you store in the back closet for 3 years and then hope it works.
You certainly don't run it in the house either.
Gosh,
I've heard that.
We all know that. We all know that. But anyway, so that would be a good savings. I mean, but would that tip me into whether buying one or not? I don't know.
The interesting thing,
but I might not be as being like, who am I? Molly? No.
I never said anything like that. I think I called you Martha.
Martha. Right.
Well, and I think it's to a bigger point. If you
most Marthas might feel differently. I don't know.
Hurricane preparedness, it ain't cheap.
Right.
Kevin Guthrie, the DEM director, I mean, he's talked about that a million times. Just that whether it's evacuating or prepping, people are on a tight budget. And I mean, if you got $1,000 laying around for a generator that you might use, I understand why that's not necessarily on someone's triage list.
I think it's so interesting, though. Like we went from this $5 billion pitch down to $350, and what I thought was so interesting about it was how the Senate looked at the sales tax cut, right? Because Albritton came out, DeSantis said he was going to veto the thing, and that's ultimately what blew up the original framework, which was that DeSantis was going to veto it, and then the senators felt like, oh well, people aren't going to feel that. At the end of the day, I always want to try and save some money. And I think that, with the sales tax holidays, I know that I've saved money. I will say this. I know that I've saved money for the sales tax holiday that has to do with state parks, where you don't have to get charged to go to a state park. They waive the fee for endless fun summer sales tax holiday or the holiday. That's not
really a sales tax.
It's not a sales tax thing. But
it's a user fee.
But at the very least, I remember feeling that. And I remember...
Did you buy a kayak, though?
I did buy a kayak.
Okay, well then you got a little change.
Exactly.
You saved a little chunk of change.
Exactly. So I can see how the sales tax holidays work. The deal with the sales tax reduction, the $5 billion elimination, was that there was fear that the average Floridian wouldn't actually feel it because...
Too many Canadians would be getting advantage of taking it.
Those pesky Canadians.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting that they became the villain in this.
I know. I did too.
But yeah, I mean, I also get that because who's going to force a retailer to reduce their prices if you reduce the sales tax rate by 0.75%, which I think was the original proposal? No one. So who gets the savings? I think the retailer does.
The retailer gets the savings.
Oh yeah, I mean they can keep the. They can keep the price the same and just absorb the sales tax, right? I mean, they can keep that price the same, and then what the reduction of the sales tax rate would be goes in their pocket.
Oh, you mean they can add the sales tax into the cost
there would be
of
nothing,
merchandise?
Yeah, there would be nothing stopping them from doing that. That's the cynic in me. That's the cynic in me.
I don't know. Well, I'm sure there'll be somebody on Twitter or X, whatever, who's going to be watching to say, oh,
Sure.
these sneakers cost X and now they cost whatever.
Well, I've heard the point made at this stage of session where these are other words, people's words, not mine, that whenever deep, meaningful relief they were going to offer to Floridians, that they promised to offer to Floridians, I don't know that's what the finished product is going to be at the end of the session. That's what I'm hearing from a lot of folks.
But they are cutting spending.
That's right.
Which in turn, I understand the trickle downstream. I've heard that argument too.
Ben made it today.
They're cutting spending. Okay, so Ben Albritton, the Senate president, said, well, if we cut spending, then that's going to end up
essentially rising tide floats all boats, right? Better economy for businesses in the state.
Milton Friedman. I think that's Milton Friedman.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he made the point that any sort of cost savings or reduction spending results in ultimate savings for the taxpayer.
Well, doesn't it also result in like a diminishment in services?
It could. It absolutely could.
Or not?
I mean, it depends on where those cuts are coming from. And
Right.
I mean, they've laid out some of them. I mean, we've gotten some good idea of where they're cutting money, but they're also, adding money in other areas like education. And then there's this question of I don't mean to open up a whole thing on Hope Florida, but there's this question of whether or not they're going to fund the Hope Florida navigators, right? Because the House wants to eliminate some of those positions and the Senate isn't. And so that's something they're going to hash out. Who knows? We do not have a full, complete picture of what the budget is going to look like yet.
But we still have, 2 weeks until...
Yeah, we've got time. And everyone seems to be in decent spirits.
There were quite a few, as I said, I was watching from home today, but there was quite a lot of no-shows in the House, weren't there?
That's a busy
I
time.
think there were 97 out of 120.
I didn't notice the vote total. That's interesting.
When they did at the beginning, when they did a quorum call, I saw 97, maybe more trickled in later. But all right, so the budget. Any other highlights that we need to know about?
From the budget? What do you think? I mean, $250 million going to pay down debt. That was another thing that they wanted to highlight.
My eyes are glazing over.
I know.
Let's move on to David Jolly.
All right.
Let's move on to David Jolly. Again, I miss David Jolly because I was bogged down on Tuesday. Oh, I'm just really...
You're on fire.
I'm giving myself a little... He's playing with his shoelaces over there.
Jason untied them.
Did he? At least he didn't tie them together.
No, listen, in another life,
Yet.
this guy would have been picking on me at high school. I'm 100% sure of that.
I know. Anyway, talk about David Jolly. He came to Tallahassee. This was I thought this was odd.
I thought it was a smart comms rollout, right? He traveled around the state. He talked to all these reporters before.
Right.
And he embargoed. And now, we wake up Thursday morning.
And nobody whispered about it, and nobody knew.
I mean, we all knew, but we were bound by embargo. And then all of a sudden, Thursday morning, you wake up and boom, you're hit with the Jolly bomb.
He's everywhere.
Exactly.
He could have gotten on a plane and whatever. I guess it's cheaper to come to Tallahassee.
He stopped in major markets. He did Miami, he did Tampa, he did here, and now he's in the Panhandle, I think, for the rest of the week, doing a little stop here and there. And he believes that he can cobble together, according to what he told me, disillusioned Republicans.
Let's just remind folks that he was a Republican who served in Congress.
Yes. 13th congressional.
Right. From Charlie Crist's neck of the woods. Right.
Oh, the irony.
And
it's beautiful.
You see where I'm going. It's so obvious. It's a beautiful story, though. It's so obvious. He left the Republican Party, and I guess he was a never Trumper, right? And he was an independent, and then this year he registered as a Democrat, and now he's running for governor as a Democrat. And we know how that Republican turned independent turned Democrat journey worked out for Charlie, but okay.
We literally saw this happen in 2022,
Yeah.
and this is the guy Charlie Crist is the guy that beat David Jolly
For that congressional seat.
Yes. And now they're both Democrats.
Yes.
And now,
I did leave that out. Yeah.
And
I buried the lead. We call that burying the lead.
And now Jolly is doing essentially the same thing that Charlie Crist tried to do in 2022, right? And he believes that the time is right. So he believes that there's a blue wave coming. He might be able to ride the coattails. He believes that there is disillusioned Republicans out there who look at Trump and say, I want something else. He believes that he can unite. And I'm telling you this only because I am about to tell you the same thing that I would say after any candidate would tell me this, which is, okay, good luck. But I can't tell you the number of people who enthusiastically come in with that mentality, that they're going to have the special sauce that's going to unite the party. So we'll have to wait and see. But I asked him that exact question. Okay. What makes you different than Charlie Crist?
Oh, I
got it up here because I wanted to read you verbatim what he told me.
Play it. Can you play it?
I don't know that I can play it.
Okay.
But I can say this. He said, well, David Jolly has changed over the course of 10 years. I left the Republican Party by choice. As I served as a Republican in a Democratic district, I was already supporting marriage equality, gun control, climate, science, campaign finance reform, but I continued to grow from there. With all due respect to Charlie, his journey took about 10 months. It was all about running for office. It was transactional. So he believes that he has this deeper,
a more genuine,
connection to the Democratic Party.
Did he actually refer to himself
in the third person?
Yes, he did.
I just wanted to confirm.
No.
I was going to. Thank you. I was
David
about
Jolly.
to. Yes.
David Jolly. Yeah, he gave me that. And in fact, I was talking to a political operative who heard that quote and was like, "Oh, you never talk in the third person."
Yeah, there's
unless you're Bob Dole or Donald Trump, you don't do it.
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you what Jason Delgado thinks. That
Forrest is already disgusted.
That is the same messaging that we've heard from the Democratic Party since the second day of Trump's tenure in the White House. I understand to be a politician, you have to have some sort of belief that I'm the chosen one. There's something unique about me that I can excel where others have not excelled. I don't want to indict anybody, but there's not a lot of nuance in that position.
Well, I mean,
it's not. It doesn't inspire, I imagine, much confidence.
I would say that Democrats are looking at Jolly and feeling somewhat the same. I mean, listen, he definitely has his support out there, and there are a lot of people that are excited about his candidacy. I'm not trying to undermine him, but I am saying that I've talked to a number of Democrats who were like, why would we do this again?
Right. I mean, that's
it was
a
20-point margin loss for Charlie Crist.
It was, and he was the last Democrat to run for that governor's seat. So it's not like there's a decade of like we had time to get over. They're still licking their wounds from that.
At the same time, the Dems don't have any. There's no one on the bench.
Right.
It's not like there's some miracle.
Well, everybody thought it was going to be Jason Pizzo, but then he left the party.
He's an independent now, and John Morgan may
go his own way, potentially.
His own party. He thinks he might have the special sauce to draw people, centrists to the center. David Jolly. I don't know. I mean, I want to get him on the podcast. I want to talk to him. I was sorry I wasn't. No, I've had him on the podcast before, and I was sorry I wasn't able to make it. I literally, this BOG meeting went 2 hours late, and so I wasn't able to go.
I think his campaign strategy is interesting to me because I think he's doing what he felt like Democrats should have been doing in 2024 and maybe even in 2022, which is he's going hard on affordability. That was the first thing he talked about.
Issues.
Yeah, exactly.
We talked about it before, like and eggs, bacon, and
we barely discussed the culture war stuff at all, which is stuff that Pizzo has been talking about for years. When he was minority leader, he was like, we're not going to focus on every little thing. Yeah, we're going to focus on affordability and getting stuff done that we can actually get done. Jolly seems to be ripping a page from that playbook and saying, that's going to be my campaign.
It's fine when you're talking by yourself, but when Republicans are throwing at you, because the Republicans are the one, like the Democrats aren't framing the narrative around these culture war issues. It's the Republicans that are doing it, and then they back the Democrats into a corner.
We should add, there's absolutely a faction within Democratic Party that is, heels dug in on, whether it's race issues or sexual orientation.
Right.
And if you're not a candidate that can, play that card to them.
The progressive part of the party.
Oh, they'll eat you alive.
Yeah.
It's a tough time to be a Democrat.
Well, it's going to be a really tough time to be a David Jolly, where you have to say, here I am ready to represent your party after being on the other side of the political aisle. And, Byron Donalds, I talked to him after Jolly announced, and what he told me, he's a congressman from Florida who's also running for governor.
Who has the endorsement of Donald Trump.
And he was like, he was already laying out the game plan for how you defeat Jolly, which is ask how voters can trust him. Which ideals do you believe Jolly believes in? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And then that's going to be the attack, not just for the Republicans, but it'll be the attack for the Democratic challengers as well.
I mean, I like David as a person. He's personable. He's easy to talk to.
Yeah.
He's not, he's not an attack dog.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see how he fares, and we will get him on the podcast soon. So I'm sorry I missed that. Let's see what else happened this week. There was, this is a little bit of a parochial issue, but maybe you can tell us a little bit about this. The Attorney General, the Osceola County Sheriff was arrested today or this week. I don't know. It was
this morning, I believe.
This morning. Okay.
Thursday.
Osceola County Sheriff, I think he was elected in 2024. Is he new?
Fairly new. I can't put a date on it, but he's fairly new.
So what happened there?
Good question. So I will say, leading into this, that there's been a lot of smoke around him since he took office. And I'm saying this upstream of this situation. I'm a Tallahassee reporter, but my station, News 13, rooted in Orlando. He is now facing felony charges for racketeering.
His name is Marcos Lopez. Yeah, I just wanted to.
Sheriff of Osceola County. I believe these are federal charges too. This was like a federal
joint investigation. Yeah.
There's a video out there too, which I actually just saw walking in here. Body cam of him in full uniform being arrested.
Wow.
Wild.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And he's asking something along the lines of what is this all about?
Oh no.
So clearly a messy situation. The Attorney General put out a statement condemning, obviously, what happened there. What was it?
Condemning him, not that he was arrested.
Excuse
Let's just be clear about that.
But essentially Hey, guys.
You don't want Jeremy Redfern on you.
Right.
No, I don't. People misspeak sometimes, including myself.
No, that's okay. I put you on the spot by asking
but
about it. Just 'cause it's fascinating.
You look at the press release, he was
charged
apparently
with racketeering.
Yes, by shielding what was described as a massive gambling operation, which in turn
right here in
Central Florida, which in turn was used
here in Osceola,
right,
to finance his own campaign.
Wow. Holy crap.
It's quite the story.
Take a minute and think about that, folks.
Yeah.
I know nothing about it. In fact, I had to double check. Yes, I had to double check with Jason how you pronounce Osceola today, because we have an Osceola back in Iowa.
No way.
We do. We have an Osceola County. Yeah, the Native American names are everywhere.
Is it spelled the same way?
It is spelled exactly the same way. Yep.
I wonder if we're saying it wrong down here in Florida.
I'm not going to get in the middle of that.
Okay.
But a fascinating story. And we've had so many interesting cases of elected officials being involved in either criminal or some kind of concern of wrongdoing. I'm, of course, alluding to the state attorney's issue with DeSantis. This is totally different, but DeSantis did put out a suspension order, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, earlier today. So the sheriff has officially been suspended by the DeSantis administration.
Yes.
Until, we figure out what's next. And I don't know if he can lift that. If he's cleared of wrongdoing, but I think that's not the case. As I understand it, basically it has to go before the Senate, and if the candidate or the person wants to pursue that course, otherwise they can just live with the suspension. But it would go before the Senate, the state Senate, and then they would vote on whether or not this person should be completely removed permanently.
It's not unusual for the governor to
do this during a criminal investigation.
Suspend someone who's been arrested.
And in his place, they've appointed I believe like a 25-year vet of FHP. So a trooper down there in Troop D is going to take the helm of that. But I did just Google it to make sure I could get the number right. They're saying that gambling enterprise generated $21.6 million.
Holy moly.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of moolah.
It's a chunk of change.
Yeah, I wonder if there's sales tax on that.
Okay, here we do it again.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else we want to talk about? Snacks? Did I ask you guys about snacks?
I love snacks.
What snacks do you use? What do you rely on most during session? We're getting ready to wrap up here soon, but what are your go-to snacks in the Capitol?
Oh, go for it, Jason. You're a snack vending machine guru. I mean, he's like, listen, you don't want to go to the one on 3. You want to go up to 10.
The one on 10. Now, on the third floor.
Outside the cafeteria, the snack bar or the coffee shop on 10, there's a
little nook in there where they've got 3 vending machines.
Yes.
And you take your pick, folks. The whole world's in the palm of your hands up there. Frustratingly, by the way, if anyone's listening to this and has control over this, the Pepsi machine on the 3rd floor on the house side has been down for going on about 3 weeks now.
Oh, no.
He's a Diet Dew fan, folks.
No. No. And so what do you like, G7? What's your favorite on the snack side?
So typically I always get the Diet Dew,
right?
And then I make my way to the right, and then you have the snack machine. At which point, I gotta admit this: I love Funyuns.
Oh, Funyuns are awesome.
I'm so embarrassed to admit that.
No, they're awesome.
Do it. I used to love Funyuns. I haven't had one in about 20 years. I didn't know they were still making them.
Oh, they smell like a fart, but they taste delicious.
They're great. Okay, and we did not tell everyone we did not orchestrate this ahead of time. I just asked the snack.
Oh no,
this is real, and that's what my supper
organic.
looks like during.
You're living your best life over there, aren't you, Jason?
Oh my gosh,
journalism, great.
I will say this: if we can get into the weeds on Funyuns for just a bit,
let's do it.
They are wonderful snacks, but my God, they cut up your mouth.
Do they?
Afterwards, I feel like I've eaten razor blades. I don't know if that's just me, but
the roof of your mouth.
Oh yeah, they're just
you're
shred
making
you.
me. I am having oral surgery tomorrow, so you're making me cringe just thinking about.
Well, my advice to you is to slow down, Forrest. Take your time with the Funyun.
I should eat a bunch of Funyuns before I go in there. Reeking of onion breath into
you should
the
definitely do that. I'm not one that dunks them in Mountain Dew before I eat
I do
them.
not do that. I'm not some animal.
You wash them down with Mountain Dew. You wash it down. He's actually hitting on the Mountain Dew right now as we speak.
I'm not a soda addict, but yes, I do have a proclivity, if you will, for the Diet Dew.
I disagree. I believe you are a soda addict because here's the thing. We talk about soda often, and he and I agree. I'm a bit of a soda fan, I'm a heavy consumer of Fresca, which is...
Fresca's the calorie-free.
It's calorie-free, grapefruit flavored, sparkling water.
That's so pretentious.
Juice.
Fresca feels like the 70s.
I don't know if it's... I don't know if it's pretentious or just old man.
It's a little uppity.
It feels like John Updike, like Rabbit Run to me, you know?
I'm feeling persecuted here.
No, I'm sorry. And what's your snack favorite other than Fresca, which I'm sure you cannot find in the Capitol in a machine?
Well, let's go back to body dysmorphia because I am an intermittent faster. So I will not eat all day, and then I'll go home and gorge. And that's how I do it.
Wow.
So I try not to snack. But if I do snack, it's probably a Pop-Tart out of the vending machine up there.
The intermittent fasting thing, though, works.
It does work.
I can't do it as someone with diabetes. I just have to eat.
You don't want to die. You got to eat.
Yeah.
But no, I do it. It works for me. And I will say a strawberry Pop-Tart.
Strawberry Pop-Tarts.
Probably my least favorite of the Pop-Tart community.
There is a very deep divide in
frosted
the Pop-Tart. I would say cherry's my least favorite, and frosted, for sure, frosted. Okay. Now, here's a trick. Here's a secret that I learned from my father, who is diabetic by choice. I love him.
Dad, what's your dad's name?
Lonnie
Saunders.
Benjamin
I'm sorry.
Saunders.
I apologize on behalf of your son.
I'll get an FU from him too. But he treated me when I was a kid to this secret. And what you do is listen, people are going to disagree with me, but you knock it until you try it. You take a Pop-Tart, you heat it up in the toaster for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, your choice on how hot you want the Pop-Tart. But then you take it out and you put some butter on it.
No.
And you let the butter...
You know what I tweeted today?
What?
everything's better with butter.
It totally
Oh,
is.
yeah.
I tweet once a week.
It not totally
a week, and that was my tweet of the week. Was everything's better with butter?
It is. And I asked my dad, I was like, are you sure about this butter on a Pop-Tart? He said, look at me. Fair point, Dad.
And
Oh, it's better.
okay,
It is absolutely better. If
I
anything,
stand
it's a
by
little
my-
lubrication to help you consume your Pop-Tart.
I stand by my statement. Okay. All right. Well, there we will wrap it up for this week's Reporter Roundtable with Forrest Saunders, EW Scripps Capitol reporter, and Spectrum News Capitol reporter Jason Delgado. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
So good to be back.
Thanks for listening to Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida, hosted by News Service senior writer Dara Cam and produced by me, Mike Exline. Music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC.